If you want the raw, real, boots on the ground story of what's going on in North Carolina, this is it. I spent 32 days there volunteering, and I documented every single day and what I did. On my final day, I went around and got interviews from everyone there, from homeowners and people who lived right in the middle of it to volunteers coming out there and working. That way people can hear everyone's perspective and not just mine. I'll be releasing those videos right after this, and they are absolutely remarkable. I tell the full, uncut story, and I go extremely in-depth. Feel free to go through my previous videos and check it all out. I left Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri to go to North Carolina and try and help people out, and I left with $430 in my pocket, and no idea where I was going or what I was going to do. It was just me and my dog Eli on a journey. He's just a good boy, and he lives for adventures. I had a random friend reach out while I was on my way headed out there and said that Swanoa was hit pretty bad. So I decided to make that the first place I'd land. I hit town in Swanoa without a single dollar in my pocket, but I did have a camper and a truck and a bunch of tools I could work, and I had enough food to last me a couple weeks and a full tank of gas and a bunch of items to help donate. And so I started out at Silverado's and donated items that I'd brought from my community. From there, I found that there were needing some gas delivered to Pensacola at a place called Camp Miller. And when I got out there, I realized it was the place I wanted to be. It was just a random camp set up and organized 100% by volunteers. It was also completely supplied from donations as well. The camp was the main operating base for all the volunteers going up into the mountains trying to help out. It was a place where they could camp and have somewhere to eat and catch a hot meal and a shower and use the bathroom. And most importantly, it was a place for the community to come and get all the things that they needed in order to survive. Once again, a hot meal or a shower, and then all the stuff they might need: generators and heaters, clothing and food, fuel or propane, diapers and baby needs, or anything those affected from the storm might need in order to survive. That camp was the main resource keeping that community going, while simultaneously working to tirelessly rebuild the community. There was a person from every single kind of trade out there, working to help rebuild that community. From heavy equipment operators and tree guys, to electricians and well guys, roofers and plumbers. It didn't matter, they were all there working, putting hands on. Without that camp, I'm scared to think about what that town would have been left with. My goal when I left was to go into the mountains and go to the hard to reach areas and go to the places where they might not be getting help and that might be falling through the cracks. And that was my goal, was to get to the hard to reach areas and just do what I can to help. When I first showed up, I wasn't sure what to think. Everybody was running around and super busy and seemed very driven and on a mission. Every person I would look at would be doing something that involved some kind of work. You could tell they were either putting hands on, helping there in camp, or they were dirty and rugged and doing something out beyond camp, out in the mountains somewhere, helping out. There very much was a Wild West kind of feel to the camp. To start with, well over half the people were open carrying. But I'm a huge supporter of freedom and the Bill of Rights, so it felt like home to me. But it was way deeper than that. You could feel the need to survive outweighed the laws of man. I instantly realized we were doing all we could to try and make sure these people were taken care of and able to survive. And it was very much still a struggle. Even though the storm was gone, people were still struggling on massive levels. They weren't able to leave their homes, and they needed generators and gas for power because they didn't have electricity or heat. And that's a very real necessity. They were left lost and had lost so much, and their homes were destructed or partially destructed, or there was just so much destruction all around. You soon realized that we were just doing all we could to just try and provide the bare essentials and necessities in life. And suddenly everything that you thought was important isn't nearly as important. When people don't have electricity or water or food or transportation or access to their homes in or out, you realize that they're in a very, very bad spot and that they need help in any way they can get it. Keep in mind, I showed up 1 month to the day after Hurricane Helene had hit. I realized there was no one else to do it. And it was just going to be us or no one. They were just doing all they could on their own. And that's what I walked into and realized I was in the middle of. The only thing that matters is trying to help your fellow human and trying to help the person next to you and doing all you can to just help them survive or rebuild or do anything you can, because everywhere you look, it's just destruction and heartbreak and sorrow. All you want to do is just try and help everyone. And it's so overwhelming. It was a lot to take in at first. But as I looked around camp, I also noticed all the extreme care and compassion of all those that were helping. Everybody helped to lift each other up, and you could feel the immense amount of love from every person that was there in camp. And then I realized how efficient and awesome the place truly was. Upon entering, there was always somebody at the gate ready to help guide you and direct you on where you need to go. From there, you would look around and see all the spots for camping, and you'd see a mass amount of tents and volunteers just staying in tents and pushing as hard as they can to do whatever they can to try and help. And seeing that alone really makes you understand the depths of how much these people care. They give up their whole lives and everything they have going on to come out and not even get paid and live in a tent just so they can help other people. It was a beautiful thing to witness. From there, you look around camp and you see 10 large tents. And each one of the tents has some kind of major operation going on inside. Some of these tents are military type tents that were used for medic tents in the military at some point, and they have dividers where you can divide them all off. That was our chow hall, and you could keep that one clean and sanitized and stuff like that. And I think there was another one like that as well. The federal government was nowhere in sight, which was extremely discouraging because you could see all the immense destruction and how badly people needed help. Knowing that people in our own country, on our own soil, desperately needed all the help they could get, and that our federal government was doing nothing about it, was extremely frustrating. But at the same time, it was an inspiration watching volunteers and people with just good and giant hearts come together and do the job of what the federal government should have been doing. I did go to and record the first Yancey County meeting they had after the storm. Everyone was there, including FEMA, the military, and all the local county officials that ran the county. You can find that in my previous videos as well. Local governments were doing all they possibly could. Putting it all as a local government's responsibility is not even feasible. I know how government usually works. Commissioners usually are in charge of the money in the county, and they decide how to disperse the money out into each department. They only have so much of a budget, and that budget directly comes from the taxpayers. And really all local governments are in charge of are the roads. That's the only part of rebuilding that they really have any part of. And even just that one aspect was an insurmountable task to try and take on. They did amazing with what they had. You have to understand that anywhere that water ran at all turned into a major obstacle. Simple runoff ditches that were 1 inch deep and 1 foot wide turned into places that were 10 foot deep and 50 foot wide. The bridge you're looking at was built in 4 days by some amazing volunteers. Without this bridge, the homeowners would have had no access to their home and would have had to crawl down through that river each time. It was like this for every single spot where there was a water runoff at all. And the water took everything in its path in the process. Be it roads, trees, or tragically even homes. It destroyed it all. I saw an estimate the other day of 1,800 landslides, which is heartbreaking to think about. Those landslides went a long way from the tops of the mountains all the way down, and there was a lot of heartbreaking destruction in that entire path. On top of all the landslides coming down the mountains, anywhere water normally ran down in the valleys rose by nearly 30 feet. And the amount of roads and bridges and access to people's driveways and homes is just an impossible amount of work local governments could never conceivably do by themselves, at least in any kind of timely manner. Logically, they'd have to hit the main roads, and the side roads and all that stuff is just going to have to wait. And that's where us volunteers are doing all we can to try and help piece back together these communities. And the roads are just one tiny aspect of the countless jobs volunteers are taking on out there. And it's a huge out-of-pocket expense to keep funded and keep going. That's a lot of money that it takes to get donated in order for this all to happen. I want to sincerely thank anyone who has helped donate in any kind of way. You have been an integral part in making this happen. There was also a local fire station that worked with us a lot. From what they said in the meeting, every fire station in the county is a volunteer fire station. They were doing all they could, but they were only a couple guys. Almost all the rebuilding that I seen done in the remote areas where I was at was being done by volunteers or the community members themselves. Everything seemed to be run by private individuals and private organizations. There were a lot of churches all over the country that banded together and sent locals from their community out there to work. It was a beautiful thing to watch communities from all over the United States band together and help out. And there were also larger organizations like Samaritan's Purse and stuff like that, which was a Christian organization. But they didn't stay at Camp Miller. They had their own place to stay. They were just a large, major group taking care of things out there that I seen quite frequently. From talking to people in camp and just making observations from what I'd seen, I'm guessing that somewhere around 80% of the people were religious or spiritual in some kind of way, and most of those were Christian. And once again, from talking to people and looking around, I would say that roughly 30 to 40% of the people were in the military at some point, but they were all volunteers. None of them were sent by the government or getting paid by the government or had any affiliation with any kind of federal government organization. I myself am not religious, nor have I ever served. There were a couple active duty National Guard rolling around for about a week, but there were only 3 or 4 of them, and they didn't do much. They seemed like younger guys and didn't have very many skills to offer yet, and no tools in any kind of way. The only other part that I know of that might have been federal government were the showers, laundry, and bathroom down the road at the church. But besides that, the federal government was absolutely nowhere to be seen. And all the work being done besides the homeowners themselves was being 100% done by volunteers. The Red Cross would come and serve meals, which was amazing. That was always a grateful thing that we had going on there. But it was pretty hit and miss. Most of the food that was being cooked and taken care of was all by private individuals and organizations. Whether it's just like a church from Pennsylvania or the local couple, Jody and Liz from Spruce Pine, that helped take care of us so much. They put so much work in. No matter what, there was always a meal being served every day at every time. And they somehow managed to pull it off. It was just a community effort, and there was always somebody there to fill a gap. And they were not only feeding the people there at camp, they were help feeding all the people at Pensacola. And anybody who needed a meal, their door was always open for anyone. I got to hear some incredible stories sitting with people of the community and eating breakfast or eating meals with them. I don't know how it worked or how it came to be every single time, but it was. And it was a great thing for me because I showed up just ready to work. I didn't have any money to my name, and I was depending on the ability to be able to eat and have my fuel covered if I used my truck. And besides that, I knew I had two hands and was willing to work for as long as I possibly could. Somebody being able to provide a meal, every meal enabled me to stay there and work like I did. And if it hadn't been for that, I wouldn't have been able to stay 31 days like I was. And I'm forever grateful to everyone involved to help make that a reality. So continuing looking around the camp, and the next tent you go to is the information tent. And the people working in that tent, I honestly feel have the most stressful job out of everyone in camp, simply because it's almost an impossible job to do. You have to think about what their job has been tasked with. They are the mediators between everyone doing all the work and the community. So what they have is an ever-changing world of destruction that they're trying to fix and deal with. To their credit, they have an amazing setup. They set up computers and started a way to keep track of the jobs. They send out people to do recon and figure out what jobs need done or still are ongoing. They encourage volunteers and the people doing the work to come in and report and give updates on the work they did. People needing help in the community go to that tent and get put on the list, and they're the point of contact for the volunteers, and they're just the middlemen in all of it. Volunteers have the choice to decide to either go out into the community and try and find their own work, which takes a lot of time, or they can just rely on the information tent. You got to imagine how impossible that job is, because they have people coming from out of town that want to work and volunteer. So they have a list of all these jobs, and these jobs change by the moment. You don't know if the neighbor right next to them came and did the job and helped get the tree off their house, or if their cousin from Alabama came up and helped fix their plumbing. So they send volunteers up on the mountain to go to work, and a lot of times it'll take half the day just to get up the mountain. And if the volunteers find out the work's already been done, or it's not what they expected, or they don't have the tools or all the materials, and now they got to come down, and each time they get caught in traffic or whatever, and before you know it, somebody that's came out to work and put a lot of effort into coming out here has wasted their time, and they want to hold them responsible. So that's a huge amount of stress put on them off something that they have no control over. You can't control if a neighbor helps, or if some random volunteer drives by, or if someone accidentally gave wrong information. So their job is all but impossible right from the start. And then after that, you got to imagine that if something happens to go wrong and doesn't go perfect, they were the middlemen, and they're just meeting volunteers and stuff for the first time, and volunteers are just trying to help. And sometimes people's good hearts and desire to help might get them in over their head, and they're just trying to do the right thing and help someone that has no other option. But if they accidentally make a mistake, then it creates a whole new scenario of problems. So their job is so insanely hard and stressful. I see that that's the biggest problem of it all. Trying to be a middleman in all of this chaos is impossible. And being responsible for volunteers and and for work and for everything is just an insurmountable task to ask of anyone. So I always like trying to come up with solutions to any problems I see. And my solution is I started a Facebook group that connects the volunteers directly to those people that need help and are in need. This way we ensure a volunteer's time is never wasted. I call it North Carolina Volunteer Connection for Hurricane Helene. My next video will go a little more detailed into that. Me and a young man named Ethan are working on a website as well. It's going to hopefully be just like the Facebook page, but with a broader reach. The main concept is that it allows the volunteers to directly connect to those people in need, where they can pick up the phone and call the homeowner and make sure that they still need the work done and get a materials list. And then they can see pictures of the job and even ask for more pictures of anything they may need. And they can make sure where they're going and make the most efficient use of their time. That way the most people possible get help. This also allows volunteers to follow up and let anybody else know that the job has already been taken care of or their needs have been met and the donations they were needing were found. Obviously, my idea only works if there's internet available. So until the internet is available, it's just having the patience to deal with your point of contact who is dealing with a constantly changing, chaotic situation. But currently, all cell phone service seems restored. And the information tent did many other jobs besides just connecting the workers to the homeowners. They did everything as far as organizing the camp and keeping track of everything and running all that. And if their duties could just be narrowed down to that of running the camp, it would have been so much easier for them and so much less stressful. So that's why I just wanted to try and help out and create that website. But the people running the information tent had a really hard job and they worked tirelessly to make it happen. And I really appreciate all the hard work that they put in constantly. So moving on to the next tent, it was full of the 3 most essential needs to survive. It was full of generators, grills, and heaters. They were either small buddy heaters or larger propane heaters or even kerosene heaters. And then all the propane tanks you would need to run those items, whether it be large propane tanks or small propane tanks. But that was the place and to get all those essential items. I don't know who donated them and who made that possible, but thank you so much for being able to make that happen. That made a huge difference out there and was a literal life-changing difference for a lot of people out there. Once again, thank you so much for whoever made that possible or whatever group made that possible. You guys are amazing. Moving on down to the next tent, it was actually more of a carport and it was completely full of bottled water. Just 100% nothing but bottled water, 6 foot high all the way through. The next tent down was originally a gas station, and then eventually we moved it down the road a little bit and we got big tanks that we were able to put in. Mike, he was just an awesome dude that had been there from the start. He was in charge of it all and ran everything. It was his baby and he really treated it with a lot of respect. I know there was a fuel company that helped sponsor it and help donate, and Mike worked directly with them, and he really made a lot of stuff happen. Mike was a huge contributing factor in helping all those people up there. I know there were days before we got the main tanks where we wouldn't have any funds for fuel and the gas would be all but gone. And somehow, every time, it always worked out to where we were able to keep it going. And it was a big deal because the people up on the mountains were depending on that fuel to survive and have electricity and heat and all the stuff they needed. We were the only resource for fuel and the ability for them to keep their generators going. There was a point where I had to reach out to my community and even get donations from here. And my community donated a couple $1,000s to help fill those tanks and help keep the fuel going for the community. And it was really a beautiful thing. But that's what that whole station ran on. All the fuel we were going through ran on completely donations, and everyone who helped contribute, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate all you guys. We went through a lot. There were days where we went through 700 gallons. Usually it was a couple 200 to 300 gallons a day, but some days there would be surges and it would just be overwhelming. But the camp was still able to provide fuel for everybody's generators and needs up on the mountain, and diesel for the heavy equipment running and doing all the work around. But a huge thanks goes out to Mike for all his hard work making that happen, and everyone that helped contribute and keep that gas station going. Thank you guys so much. So moving on down, the next 4 tents were all supply tents for necessities that people would need personally. There was an amazing couple that were local and they just were so awesome and worked tirelessly to keep that place going. Madeline, who we all called Mama around the camp, and David, that worked just relentlessly to keep all those organized and everything going down there. Each tent had a different necessity. The first tent was all canned goods and non-perishables along with dog food. From there, moving down to the next tent, it was all basically cosmetics and personal needs and supplies for personal stuff. Toothbrushes, diapers, soap, stuff like that. Whatever personal stuff that people may need. The next tent was all clothing and anything that people might need to wear, different sizes, all that kind of stuff. And the final tent down there was a tent of bedding and air mattresses and sleeping bags and stuff like that. And boots. I think there were boots and shoes in that one too. Those 4 tents were all run by Mama and David, and they kept track of everything and showed up every day and ran those. And I really appreciate all the hard work they put in and all the work they did to help everyone. That was pretty much it for the tents. There was a laundry trailer down there for a while where we could go and do our laundry, and it was really convenient to have there in camp. But eventually they ended up moving that out. But there was a shower trailer that was there the entire time, where we could always go and have a nice hot shower, which was awesome, especially on days where you went and mucked out and were covered in mud and nastiness. I mean, you had to have a shower and clean up, and it was so nice to have a hot shower to come back to. And from there, we had porta potties. There were lots of porta potties, and they were always kept nice and clean. They never stunk. It was always a real nice porta potty, and there was a guy that came around and cleaned those every day, who I really appreciate as well. And one final aspect was all the countless volunteers that I watched come in and out of that camp every single day. Sometimes it would be entire crews of people with a whole bunch of heavy machinery and all kinds of equipment, or other times it would just be a single person that all they had to offer were their 2 hands. But at the end of it all, it was a community effort of everybody working together to make it happen. I don't know how many business owners and trades I saw represented there. I literally saw every trade represented there. Some people had really intense, hard jobs. I think the hardest, most dangerous job out there were the tree guys' job. It was extremely dangerous, and there were people that had been hurt and even killed out there trying to help. No one from our camp, but it was something that had happened in other camps. Kurt, Daniel, and a group of local individuals from here at Lake of the Ozarks went out there and did the intense, hard tree work that needed to be done. They were put in extremely dangerous and difficult situations. Luckily, Kurt is the best of the best and made the most insanely difficult job ever seem simple. And the people that had the hardest job emotionally were the poor search and rescue people. My heart really goes out to those guys and everything they had to witness. Y'all are amazing for doing what you do. But like I said, every trade and every kind of job was represented out there. To every person that came out and put hands on and did work out there and sacrificed in their lives, thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you did. Being in camp was awesome because you got to witness the beauty of humanity and people coming together like brethren to work together for a common goal. But when you went out into the mountains and saw the destruction, it was heartbreaking beyond belief. The devastation and the destruction was just so much, it was overwhelming. The loss of life was immense. Many people lost their lives in that storm, and hearing the stories just broke you down and brought you to tears. The trauma that those poor people had to see was unimaginable. Being caught in that storm and being helpless and trapped while the whole world is coming down around you must be a terrifying feeling. And then the aftermath that they had to endure of realizing they lost friends and loved ones. The lasting trauma that that's going to create is something immense. Something as simple as rain again is a trigger that's going to definitely make people feel a lot of emotions from the trauma that they've had to endure. So there's a lot of unseen damage out here too, but it's a huge amount of damage that's went to the hearts of these people out here, and it's still there nonetheless, and it's still a major, major deal. It's just something that's not being talked about. To think about what those poor people had to endure is absolutely heartbreaking. But one thing I did learn while out here was how incredibly tough and resilient these people are out here. They have been able to pick themselves up and brush themselves off and just keep pushing through. And they work as a community together to make this happen. It's slow and steady, but they are slowly rebuilding and making it happen. And it's an inspiration to watch them push through and persevere. One of the worst parts was realizing that all these people didn't have any insurance on their homes. They didn't have flood insurance in the mountains, and there's no landslide insurance. And from the people I talked to, most of the insurance companies just drop the people anyway. It didn't matter whether somebody was a multimillionaire and had a $3 million house, or whether somebody just had an RV that was only worth $5,000. If it got washed away or ruined, they were completely out and lost everything. Seeing these poor people lose so much and have no way to be able to regain it back was a truly hopeless feeling. I could only imagine what it was like to be in their shoes. Most of the people only got $750 from FEMA and were completely left out on their own after that. From what I saw, it was only volunteers and neighbors that were rebuilding the communities. The federal government just simply wasn't there and left them high and dry. It was so heartbreaking. It was really hard to wrap your mind around. After being there for a couple weeks, and constantly seeing all the destruction, it really starts to weigh on. There comes a point when you're out there dealing with it to where it almost just burdens you so much that it's more than you can handle. And it feels like the whole weight of the world's on your shoulders, and you just kind of have to work through that and realize that it's not going to be an instant process, that it's going to be a slow building process. But you have to take the mindset of eating an elephant one bite at a time, and you can do it. You have to slowly, steadily plug away and just do anything you can. And what I came to realize is that every day you may be doing a different job. I showed up ready to drive trucks and run equipment and just work really hard. The job was ever changing every day, and I would constantly say it's like a puzzle piece, and I'd just find my puzzle piece for the day because I never know what I needed to do. And a lot of people would come out thinking they'd do one thing, and lo and behold, the job for the day dictates you need to do something completely different. And the needs of people varied daily, and every day it would be something different, and a different problem would arise or obstacle that we'd have to overcome. And what I learned most out there was patience. I showed up wanting to just work nonstop. Originally, I planned to work for 3 days and just work super hard and put as much time in as I could. And I soon realized that the more I rushed, the more things seemed to slow me down. Whether it's road construction or electrical lines or culverts or whatever, your day got slowed down. And it was just the nature of the beast out there. You go to check on a job and all the roads got washed away, so they're constantly rebuilding roads. That is always a struggle. So it was not unheard of to wait an hour in line in traffic. So you're just trying to do something or go grab something real quick. You just need a part, and then you suddenly have to wait an hour each direction for one little thing, and all progress is stopped, and you just have to learn to be patient. Same thing with electrical lines. Since bridges were out, we were having to go through valleys and cross creeks and rivers to get through stuff, and it's just patience was soon a thing that had to be gained, which is really hard when you have every trade trying to work and do things at the same exact time, and everybody's rushing and pushing and rushed on time, and it's just you have to just be ready to take a break and just go at whatever pace life dictates for the moment. Above all, I can say that the greatest experience of it all was working side by side with such amazing people, and with people who cared so much and who were so compassionate. Everybody I worked with just seemed to want to help out, and they were just there to help and to try and do something positive in some kind of way. And it was just such a beautiful thing to watch. If you look on the TV, all you see is division, and they always try and tell us how bad the world is. But you go out there in a situation like that, and people put everything aside and put their lives on hold. It's not just the politics that people weren't talking about. It wasn't just that people were no longer divided and fighting. It was the fact that we worked together and cared and were compassionate about each other and the people and everything. Complete strangers came together and put their arms around each other and just pushed back against the ugliness and the hardness in the world. And they worked to just push and help make something better and to try and help our fellow man. It was really a beautiful thing to watch and be a part of, and it really restored my faith in humanity. It's heartbreaking to see all the destruction and stuff, but this dark cloud has a silver lining, and it brings out the best in people. It gave me a new faith and a new hope in mankind. I was out there at Camp Miller for 31 days. I'm back home in Missouri now. I left just in time to get home for Thanksgiving. Since then, the camp has been moved and downsized. But that doesn't mean that they still don't need help. They still need all the help they can possibly get out there. People are still struggling massively. What we had there on that piece of ground was just a brief moment in history, but it's something that's going to stick with me for the rest of my life. I can't thank Mr. Miller enough for giving us the opportunity to have that camp and for making it all possible. He's the reason we were able to do that, and we're able to help so many people. And from there, I want to give an immense thank you to Brian, who worked tirelessly to make sure the camp was functioning and going. He was definitely the camp's fearless leader. And finally, I want to sincerely thank all the volunteers that just came together and worked and put hands on and left their homes and their families and just came and did all they could to try and help out. There are too many people to list, and I know I'd forget somebody and end up feeling bad, but I thank all of you, every single person involved, from the bottom of my heart. You guys are all amazing, and you're just beautiful, kind souls that I have an immense amount of love for. You guys are great humans, and I appreciate all of you for everything you did. It was just a really miraculous and beautiful thing to watch, and it was a really, really great piece of my life that I'm glad I did, and I'm glad I went and experienced. And that's my story for Camp Miller. I appreciate everybody for following along and keeping up, and for listening to my journey. I started this page over 6 months ago, and I try to post a video a day of some kind of positivity or some way to try and help the world somehow. 16 years ago, I had a little boy that was born premature. He was 1 pound even, and unfortunately, he was only here for a little over 5 weeks. I was able to hold him in my arms, and I promised him I'd do all I can to try and help make the world a better place. Through that, I see there's constant problems in the world, and instead of fighting and complaining about the problems, I just simply look for solutions. And then I try to put hands on to make those solutions a reality. After many years, I wrote a book, and this year, 6 months ago, I finally published that book. I'll provide a free copy of it in the description section of this video. I call it a Handbook to Freedom. Originally, it was a Handbook to Freedom and World Peace. I believe that we can achieve peace in this world if we simply have the freedom to do what we want as long as no one is harmed. If someone is harmed, of course let due process take over and hold them accountable and seek justice to the fullest. But if there is no victim, there should be no crime. All we want is the freedom to do our own thing and be left alone. And when we're forced to live by someone else's ways, that's when the conflict and the fighting comes. So I honestly believe that freedom is paramount to peace. My solutions are far from the norm, and I knew it might cause me some heartache. So I went ahead and started this channel, and I called it Butterfield Unleashed because I was no longer holding back. And because it was just me and my dog, and I knew we'd probably be doing some traveling. I was literally going to put my whole life on the line and just put it all out there. I want to try and create positivity and something good for the world. And through that, it led me to this journey where I am right now, and this whole adventure that I just went on. You can go through my YouTube page and see my journeys and see everything I've done so far in the last 6 months. It's been a really heavy and intense ride. I do a wide variety of stuff on this page, from talking philosophy or telling weekly funny stories from my life to giving away weekly inventions, all in the hope to get other inventors to open source their energy inventions. I have an energy invention that I feel will truly change the world and give the power to the people for the first time in history. It uses nothing more than the abundant resource of gravity that is all around us. Imagine hoisting a semi-truck down a cliff by a giant motorcycle chain and having that chain connected to a massive generator. Now multiply that times all the semis going down the mountains every single day, and you'll see that we waste a lot of energy. And that's just the weight of the semis going down mountains, much less all the water from septic plants or drainage ditches. I'll share a link to that in the description section as well. I'm just trying to keep my promise to my son and help the world. I'm not trying to say my ideas are perfect or flawless. I'm just trying to open up the conversation and doing all I can to try and create peace in this world. Ultimately, I'd like to try and have everyone from across the table sit down and work together for solutions. Just have a big open forum to where everyone with different perspectives and different views sits down and openly, peacefully talks for the best solutions we can come up with. I think this is what it's going to take to be able to change the world and create peace. Thanks a lot for everyone following along and keeping up. I love all you guys. Please like and subscribe to keep up with my journeys. Thanks, everyone.